one of the reasons why I chose to do the research on health in agriculture is because we're so bad as a society of connecting the usefulness of agriculture with other areas of society. So we don't take advantage of the opportunities that are in agriculture to affect social relationships, to affect, like we were talking about, the rural communities. There's a huge possibility of having stronger rural communities that draw from their agricultural base, and I mean, a lot of farmers are quite educated. I mean, here a lot of the students that come to this university will return to their farms. They've lived in the big city and they've had the taste of the cultural aspects the big city can provide. They've experienced the social relationships that a city can provide, and for me there's no reason why you can't bring a lot of that back to rural communities. The difference between cities and rurality doesn't have to be so big, and you don't have to lose all of the services that that are being lost. By having a vibrant agricultural sector that you place some value on, and don't just value for what's being put out of it. Agriculture connects to an awful lot of different areas, and it's been used in small projects to affect different areas. There was a really interesting project in England where they took inmates from a prison, so inmates who were fairly close to being released from prison, and had them work on farms to gain some skills and to reintegrate into community and to feel that they're doing something valuable and feel a bit more like normal people, because prisons are basically the least healthy place you can put someone. They're just the isolation and that feeling of shame, I suppose, that's built into every aspect of a prison. I think working on the farm and interacting with the other farm labourer and working as part of a team, doing something where you see the results really quickly and really clearly, you can see how that has a useful effect for society. And it's been done in lots of small projects. And I would say that could be considered a health project. It's at least mental health project and community health project. But it's not really been done on a big scale. These connections haven't really been made. And you see it at the ministry level where the connections aren't made. Here the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Health are jointly responsible for organic agriculture in this country. And in talking to the different people who are involved with these ministries, the one person says, well, we're responsible for the environmental, making sure that the farms meet the environmental standards. And then the other side says, well, we're responsible for food safety in organic agriculture and for deciding what the subsidies get based on. One thing, there's a big crossover between food safety and environmental health. But there's also a huge gap of other things that agriculture does. If you wanted to have a positive effect, then you have to at least recognize the possibility of having a positive effect. And if you don't measure for health effects in agriculture, then you don't build that into the system in a way. It might happen accidentally, but you're not building it into the system. And by measure, I mean, it doesn't have to be quantifiable measures, but it's just thinking about how do we check whether or not it's having a good health effect or not? Can we look for it? When you think about which health measures are most talked about with regard to organic, it's nutritional value or pesticide residues in comparison with conventional. And so that there's a danger that that's all that health with an organic will be. And a question of, is it more nutritious, and is it does it have fewer pesticide residues? But it's again missing the opportunity to talk about health in a much broader way and to take advantage of the linkages of what that agriculture has to offer. So it would be a shame now to limit what health is to nutritional value and pesticide residues. How else can we expand this health concept? How else can we use, or what else can agriculture be in society other than an output of nutritious food and other than an output of various chemicals? What else can agriculture be? What other roles can agriculture play in society? And can it have some kind of transformative capacity for various social relationships? Can it transform the relationship between urban and rural communities? Can it transform how we buy food, how we eat, how we engage with animals, how we engage with nature, how we communicate, how we travel? To me, building those connections between agriculture and other social sectors is really interesting to me. And the health part is absolutely one area that seems very natural to deal with this with agriculture, because the health effects in terms of illnesses and possibilities in terms of improving health, preventing illnesses, or strengthening, giving people resilience, it's almost untapped. It's not been much on the radar at all. There are a few people who are working on it in England that I know of, who are really trying to push it into policy to say, well, what else can we do with agriculture to improve, maintain health, or to prevent illness or treat illness? It's not only agriculture that needs to change, it's also the health system that needs to change, and the two need to change together in order for them to actually have any kind of synergies. And to do that, you need to be able to interpret health in a way that you see it as a relevant thing for agriculture to be dealing with. In terms of the positive examples, there's a lot of work with like the green care movement across, it's a lot of it in Europe and some in the US, where they're placing people on farms for various forms, to do various forms of work, to have holidays basically from their stressful jobs, or to learn how to be in nature again, to learn how to produce food, that then goes back to the cities. What they're trying to set up here is where managers and executives from big businesses go for 2-3 days probably at most, to stay on a farm, to help produce the food, to spend time in nature, spend time talking to the farmers, and to get away from the city a bit, and to take that with them when they leave again, so that there's a positive effect for the farm in terms of getting a bit of extra income, and to an extent some help on the farm. But there's also then a bigger benefit for the urban areas where they can bring this, they can have a way of actually escaping the city and learning some skills and learning a bit about food that they can bring back to the cities. And in that small way, that's changing the relationship between the city and the rural areas in a way that could be beneficial for health. The other examples would probably be school farming projects that can have really quite fantastic effects, where either there's a farm that the students go to work and to cook and learn about nature, or an actual farm, a mini farm, that the students run themselves. And I've seen a couple of examples of that in the US. The first one was a primary school, I think, I think it was only a primary school, where the students they started the garden themselves, and they raised everything themselves. It started just with little vegetable patches, and then they added some chickens, and then they got a goat, or they had 2 goats, and it sort of grew and grew and grew, and they added a weather monitoring station. And initially it was just meant to be a class on producing some food and learning a bit of the history of their culture in a way. And then after a while they found that the biology classes were going out there to have a little look for insects, or look at plants and study the wildlife, look at the ecology of the place. And so they were using the farm or the garden as an interactive classroom. And the history classes would have be involved with the garden, where they created a Native American wilderness area to show how they use different plants. Over time, the parents got involved with this, and it just grew into a centre or a focus for so much of what happened in the school. One of the ways it hadn't been incorporated was in terms of the food that the students were eating. But you could see that the community had changed around this. It had a very positive effect on the interactions between people. The students were getting up and they were moving around and they were out in the fresh air. Food production doesn't just have to be about output. It can be about an awful lot of things. When people start getting involved with it, they start, it changes the way they interact, and it changes the way they think about the processes they're part of. And the other school farm project that I visited while I was there was an actual farm that was located next to a school for students to go work on that farm for a little. And the purpose there was very much health, so how to get the students to eat healthy. And so the food that they were preparing was always very fresh and in a way it's that would probably be the prime example for me of a farm that is healthy and that is really rethinking what it means to be a farm. Because they took over an existing farm and converted it to a biodynamic farm, dairy farm for the most part. And And then it expanded and expanded, and they have vegetable production. They have a seed production enterprise where they produce one of not too many biodynamically certified seeds. Slaughterhouse is connected to the farm. They have a hotel that's connected to the farm. They have conference rooms that are all connected to the farm. They've done this on the principle of asking, well, how can we integrate this community in what we're doing? How can we be part of this community, and how can this community be part of us? And one of the schemes that they used to do that was a funding scheme for bringing disabled people to the farm, to work on the farm. One of the people that they had to really work very hard for, to sort of win, in a sense, to bring them into the farm, was a man who couldn't stand conflict. He really, if there was any conflict, he would just break down. And this was really hard for them to deal with, because in such an expanded enterprise where they were trying to do this collaboratively and bring in everybody in the decision-making process, there was inevitably conflict sometimes. Well, not inevitably, actually. They changed their communication structures in a way to support harmonious communication between all the different parts of the farm. And they, of course, found that this was incredibly good for all of them. It meant that they weren't in conflict with each other, and that's great. But that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't have had this idea of integrating this man who for whom that was just really hard to deal with, and they maybe didn't realize what a stress it was putting on them to have conflict within it. One young man, or teenager possibly, who he didn't like to be with a lot of different people. He liked this main farmer, and he wanted to work with him. And there was a lot of things that this young man thought that he couldn't do, and didn't particularly feel capable of doing. And the farmer would just start very small. He'd be working in the stables and say, well, just pass me that spade, will you? And the boy would go get the spade and bring him the spade. And then he'd say, well, just move this bit of manure over there. And then he'd just do that. And then after a while, they built up a set of things for this man to do. So he was doing a job. And then the farmer would move on to a different job, and he'd start the same way of saying, well, just build up a job by lots of individual steps. And at the time when I was talking to the farmer, he was saying that this man now knows more jobs on the farm than anyone else. The idea of collecting problems and different ways of dealing with how does a community create change, and how can the community deal with particular types of problems.